Hello and welcome to this lesson where we're going to go over a big idea and try to explain it in a simple way and expose you to some English along the way. In this one, we're going to focus on socialism. So the simple idea is that socialism is about sharing important stuff so everyone has a fair chance at a decent life. Instead of everything being owned by private individuals trying to make a profit, some key things are owned or run collectively, usually by the government or by workers together. Think of it less as everyone owns everything and more as some things are too important to be run just for profit. A very everyday analogy might be a village bakery. So in a very capitalist setup, one person owns the bakery. They decide prices, they keep the profits. Bread might be expensive if it makes them more money. In a socialist style setup, the bakery is owned by the village or the workers. Bread is priced so everyone can afford it. Profits, if any, go back into the community, and the goal is feeding people, not maximizing money. So that's the same bakery, but it's a different priority. So the last one is the socialist setup, and the first one is the capitalist setup. That is a good example of the difference between capitalist and socialist. Yeah. Very basic one. What socialists usually care about? Most forms of socialism focus on basic needs for everyone. Healthcare, education, housing, transport. Less extreme inequality, so fewer billionaires and fewer people struggling to survive. More worker power, workers having a say, not just bosses or shareholders. It's about fairness and security, not luxury for all. Okay, what socialism is not? Common myths. Everyone earns exactly the same. No. No one can own personal things. The government controls every part of your life. Is that annoying? Yeah, it's getting annoying, isn't it? You can still have different jobs, different pay, personal property, your house, clothes, phone. The debate is really about who controls big economic power, not your toothbrush. Well, that's lucky. I'm glad that I own my toothbrush if I am in a socialist setting, because that would be gross, wouldn't it? All right, why people like it? Fewer people fall through the cracks. Do you know what that means? To fall through the cracks? So to end up in a very bad situation. Fall through the crack, though, specifically really means let something go down. Imagine in this image here, the sort of happy life is this surface level, and then maybe homelessness and extreme poverty is down this crack. Less fear around illness, unemployment, or old age, and society feels more like a team than a competition. Yes. Okay, why people criticize it? Government systems can be inefficient. Less incentive to innovate. Risk of too much central control if badly designed. Yes. Both sides have real points. How socialism works in practice matters a lot. So in one sentence, socialism says, let's organize society so everyone's basic needs are met, even if that means less focus on profit and more on people. I just wanted to check in with you about something. Are you one of those language learners who often thinks, am I actually making any progress with my English? Is what I'm doing to study actually working for me? Or am I just wasting my precious time here? Well, if you think this way, then I'd like to encourage you to take action on this. Imagine how much more motivated you would be to put time and effort into your English studies if you knew that every time you studied, you would be guaranteed to be making significant progress. How much more satisfying would that be? So what do we need to do in order to find more clarity around this issue? Well, tracking your progress is a wonderful way to show evidence of your language skills having actually improved. And to track progress, the first thing you need to do is understand what level you are currently at. If you haven't taken a level assessment recently, then I highly recommend using my free test that will instantly tell you your level of English. Once you know this, you can start tracking your progress, which comes in many forms based on personal preference and your level of English. But that's a conversation for another time. For now, though, make sure you check your level of English with my free level checker, which is available over on thebritishenglishpodcast.com/freebies. That is thebritishenglishpodcast.com/freebies, or find it in the show notes of this episode. Okay, I've gone ahead and asked it this. Can you give some examples of some countries that are socialist and those that are capitalist, and the time frame as well, and what was the result, as in the quality of life per individuals? That's not the best English, so don't worry about that. But here's the response. So first, one crucial clarification. Almost no country is purely socialist or capitalist. Real countries are mixed systems on a spectrum. That's interesting, I think. I tend to assume one country is this, one country is that. So what we'll do is look at countries that leaned strongly one way when, and what happened to everyday life. All right, so countries that leaned socialist or state-led collective ownership. Soviet Union. So the time frame between 1917 and 1991. So the state-owned industry or central planning. Results for everyday life: universal education and healthcare, rapid industrialization, so from peasant society to superpower. Wow, didn't expect that. Chronic shortages of consumer goods and low personal freedom, political repression. Quality of life: secure basics but limited choice and freedom. Not luxurious, not starving after early famines, but very controlled. I was going to say, I feel like there was a famine at this point. Give me a comment if you know better. Cuba, time frame 1959 to the present. It's a state-run economy, strong welfare focus. So results: excellent healthcare outcomes. Yeah, is it? Very high literacy, low wages, and limited consumer goods and travel restrictions. And also, if you've got low wages, then obviously it'll be hard to travel because you don't have... Well, no, I'm confusing currency there. Ignore me. Quality of life: people don't usually starve or go without doctors, but live modestly with few material comforts. Okay. East Germany, 1949 to 1990, Soviet-style socialism. So guaranteed jobs and housing, poor product quality versus the West, surveillance state. Okay. Quality of life: stable but constrained, noticeably lower than West Germany, which mattered a lot once people could compare. I think we get the idea. Let's go to a capitalist. So obviously the United States since 1945, especially since 1945. Okay. So free markets, private ownership. So high innovation and wealth creation, high living standards for many, but big inequality and healthcare insecurity for some. So very high quality of life if you're doing well, but much tougher if you're poor or unlucky. Same as the UK, post 1979. Interesting. I didn't know that we shifted gears particularly around that point. So I've asked it, what makes you say 1979 was the point at which the UK leaned towards capitalism? Short answer, it marks a clear change in direction, not the start of capitalism itself. The UK was already capitalist, but after 1979, it became much more market-driven. That year matters because it's when Margaret Thatcher came to power in the United Kingdom. Oh, 79. I thought it was later than that. But I think she may have just had a very long reign. Yeah. Thatcher's reign. I know it went into the 1990s, or maybe just as I was born, 1990, she stopped. Yes, 1990. Gosh, so 11 years. Didn't know you could be in charge for that long. Okay. Anyway, so the UK, especially post then, capitalist with welfare state. So the NHS provides universal healthcare. Well, that's very socialist, isn't it? Strong consumer economy, rising inequality, housing affordability issues, quality of life, comfortable for many with strong safety nets, but increasingly strained at the lower end. If you don't know, I feel like I can comfortably say that the UK is a bit more of a welfare state than the US. Yes, that's very factual, isn't it? All right, South Korea. Okay, South Korea from the 60s onwards, capitalism with state-guided growth. Yeah, that does kind of make sense to what I know, which is very little. Went from poverty to high-income country, world-class tech and education, extreme work pressure, high stress levels. Quality of life, materially excellent, socially demanding. So then we've got Japan as well. Then we've got a hybrid. So hybrids are Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. So they get very high quality of life, low poverty, high freedom, high taxes. Yes, they get high taxes, don't they? Consistently among the world's best, strong evidence that markets and safety nets work well together. So the big picture takeaway, system leaning strong socialism equals security, equality, but inefficiency and repression risk. I just asked it to confirm what repression risk means. So when a system puts a lot of power in the hands of the state, there's a higher chance that that power gets used to control people rather than serve them, to repress society. Yes, okay. Strong capitalism, the strengths are innovation and wealth. The weaknesses, inequality, insecurity. Mixed systems, balanced stability, high taxes, complexity. Okay. Honest conclusion from ChatGPT. Quality of life depends less on the label and more on governance, institutions, corruption levels, and flexibility. That was quite a political answer, wasn't it? Like a politician's response. Bad capitalism is brutal. Bad socialism is brutal. Well-run mixed systems tend to do the best. Okay, I wanted to ask it why people argue so fiercely about it. I have an opinion, but I want ChatGPT to respond. So it's about fear, identity, morality, and history, all rolled into one. Let's unpack why socialism versus capitalism turns calm adults into people yelling on podcasts. People argue about different nightmares. For many on the right, so the right is the conservative, often capitalist. Let's double check that. So they mean people who generally prioritize individual freedom, markets, tradition, and limited government power. Okay. So it's a shorthand for a cluster of beliefs, not a single personality type or party. Where the phrase comes from, it comes from the left-right political spectrum. So do we have... Is this going to show it? Yes. So we've got moderate centre. That's the centrists, kind of, yeah, another word for centre. Then we have conservative going slightly to the right, and then reactionary. I didn't know about reactionary being far right. Okay. And then to the left, we've got liberal and then radical. Okay. So originally from the French Revolution, those who wanted radical change sat on the left. Those who wanted to protect tradition and hierarchy sat on the right. Over time, the labels stuck, even though politics got much more complicated. Right, okay? It's got it to create an image for us to help understand it. So those on the left wanted radical change. Those on the right wanted to protect tradition. Nice one, chatty. All right. So what on the right usually means today, people described as on the right often believe individual responsibility first. People should mainly take care of themselves and their families. Help from the state should be limited and targeted. Markets over government. Businesses and competition are better than government control. Profit is seen as a useful signal, not a moral failure. Small government. Lower taxes, fewer regulations, less state involvement in daily life. And they have a respect for tradition, existing institutions, family, religion, nation. They all matter to them. And rapid change can break things that work. So they are not happy with a lot of change very quickly. What they usually worry about, again, this is talking about those on the right, they worry about the state becoming too powerful. Loss of free speech, being forced to support systems they disagree with, and dependency replacing self-reliance. So when they hear words like socialism, they may hear the government will decide things for you. Okay. Important nuance. The right is not one group. They are free market liberals, social conservatives, libertarians, national conservatives. They often disagree with each other, sometimes fiercely. A free market liberal, is that another word for capitalist? Not exactly, but they overlap a lot. Capitalism, an economic system. Free market liberalism, a political economic belief about how capitalism should work. So free market liberals are a type of capitalist, those who believe capitalism works best with minimal government involvement, but capitalism itself comes in many flavors. So that was a rabbit hole from people on the right. So back to why people argue so fiercely about these two systems. And they said people are arguing about different nightmares. For many on the right, we understand the right clearly now. The nightmare is the state gets too powerful. You can't speak freely, you can't leave. Everything is grey, scarce, and controlled. This fear is shaped by Cold War memories. So from what I understand, Cold War means the threat of a potential war. Let's check. Any serious conflict between groups or countries that avoids direct fighting but involves spying, threats, or heavy political pressure. Okay, stories from authoritarian communist states or the idea of losing individual freedom. That's what the right traditionally fear. For many on the left, the nightmare is you are sick but can't afford treatment. You work full time and are still poor. A few people hoard enormous wealth, and your life is dictated by your boss or debt. The fear is shaped by lived experiences of inequality, corporate power, and crises like 2008 and rising housing costs. So people aren't debating policy, they're defending themselves against different kinds of harm. Yeah? History left emotional scars. So economic systems aren't abstract. When your family lived through mass unemployment, your parents fled a one-party state, your town collapsed under deindustrialization. For example, in Eastern Europe, socialism can mean surveillance and silence. In industrial Britain or the US, capitalism can mean abandoned communities. These memories get passed down like heirlooms, emotionally, not analytically. An heirloom is a thing that a family will pass down, often a prized object, like a piece of jewelry, for example. I was thinking of a tiara. Do you know what a tiara is? Don't know if I can spell the word. Tiara. Jewelry. Tiara. Tiara. Yes. That's what a tiara is. It'd look lovely on me, wouldn't it? A little tiara. Would you like to get me a tiara? Do you have a tiara? Can I borrow your tiara? Okay. So those feelings like an abandoned community or surveillance and silence, they get passed down through the generations. Yes, makes sense. The words themselves are blurry. People use the same word to mean totally different things. One person says socialism and means Nordic healthcare, which is good healthcare. Another, but I suppose it does mean higher taxes. Another hears socialism and thinks Soviet tanks, like military tanks. Like these guys. Bang, bang. Pow, pow, pow. One person says capitalism and means small businesses. Another hears corporate greed and crashes, like financial crash. So half the argument is that's not what I meant by that word. That's not what I mean by that word. It's tied to moral identity. For many people, supporting capitalism equals believing in effort, freedom, responsibility. Supporting socialism equals believing in fairness, care, dignity, and solidarity. When you criticize the system someone supports, they hear, your values are wrong. And people don't calmly debate their values, they defend them. Yeah, I can see that totally. There are no clean victories. There's no system that made everyone rich, kept everyone free, never abused power, never left anyone behind. Every system has success stories, disaster stories, trade-offs. So arguments keep looping because both sides have real evidence. I've got my personal opinions about that. I don't want to make this a political video. I'm simply explaining two systems of thought or society for you to be able to better express yourself in English. So I'm not going to react to that one. I'm going to move on. Feel free to get active in the chat if you want to, though. The sneaky reason it stays fierce. This debate is also about who deserves help, who deserves reward, what society owes you, what you owe society. Those aren't technical questions, they're deeply personal ones. So one sentence takeaway, people argue fiercely because they're not choosing an economic model, they're choosing which risks they're most afraid of and which values they want society to protect. Yeah, nice. Okay, so let's summarize everything. So most political arguments about socialism versus capitalism aren't really about economics. They're about power, risk, fairness, freedom, and fear. Yeah, okay. Capitalism versus socialism. Very simply, capitalism, businesses and property are privately owned. Markets decide prices and production. Strength is its innovation and wealth creation. Weakness, inequality and insecurity. Whereas socialism, some key industries or services are collectively owned or run. focus on meeting basic needs for everyone. The strengths are that there is security and equality, weaknesses, inefficiency, risk of power, concentration. Risk of power, concentration, yeah. No country is purely one or the other. Real countries mix them. Why people argue so fiercely, we've just covered that, so that's fine. The right versus the left, we've covered that. Free market liberal, yeah, that's fine. The UK. Final takeaway, most people aren't choosing systems, they're choosing which risks they're most afraid of and which values they want society to protect. That's why the argument never really ends. Okay, there we go. So I hope you enjoyed exploring this big idea with me to make it simple and understandable for me and hopefully for you to better your English and express yourself in the way you want in a non-native language that you are doing so well in. Well done for getting to the end of this video. And if you want to learn more, then watch another video of mine right now.